Welcome to Drill Down Earnings. We have the latest quarterly results from ASML. This is the business story behind one stock on a move. I'm Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist for Epistrophy Capital Research. So ASML has kind of a monopoly on making these just incredibly complicated machines that make the greatest semiconductors in the world. If you can imagine, these machines are the size of a city bus. They're just huge and complicated with giant mirrors and lasers, and there's nothing else like it. Q4 earnings for this company were really good. They had 6.85 euro in sales earnings per share, $9.3 billion, or billion euro in revenues, I should say. It's a Dutch company. We speak in euros. Why not? Dutch-ish? Not really. Anyway, beating what Wall Street expected by quite a bit. Bookings also a lot better than expected. 7.1 billion euro in bookings when the expectations were 5.7%. But we can dig a little bit deeper here. So 28% in revenues reflects a real ramp in revenues over the course of the last few quarters. And there were some concerns about what was happening with spending in high bandwidth memory a few months ago, not 3 months ago when they were last reported a quarter. And there were also, of course, these new concerns about the DeepSeek hardwareless AI, is that possibly a thing, and what that means in this quarter. So we're going to dig into that right now. So I mentioned total sales, 9.3 billion euro, up 28%. Really big numbers here. Bookings also up a lot, really good. And much of their sales, 30% of their sales, were their EUV machines, the ones that are used to make the most advanced AI chips. We're going to get into that in a second. Now, there's a lot of service revenues here, 23% of revenues, but it's really about system sales here, 77% of revenues, and prices are going higher. The average cost of one of their machines, their entire list of machines, the EUV machines are the most expensive to the cheaper machines, 53.9 million euro per machine, amazing. But as I said, bookings recovering, 78% change over the last quarter in bookings, really strong number. Look at the stock chart, the stock rallied at 5%, kind of making up for what it had lost with the DeepSeek panic of earlier this week. Nonetheless, the stock is down 19% for the year. Now, I'm not going to get into their entire product category, but I mentioned EUV, and that's what we think AI when we hear EUV. That's making NVIDIA chips, probably some AMD chips as well, maybe even some Intel chips, but really the NVIDIA Blackwell, that needs EUV to happen. And those machines cannot be sold into China. But some of their R5 chips, which is argon fluoride immersion, can be sold. So R5's super advanced lithography systems, and they're used to make some of the most powerful transistors out there. They use a deep ultraviolet light at 193 nanometers, and for those of you keeping score at home, or for those of you alone, what's the line? For those of you scoring at home, or those of you alone. Anyway, immersion lithography, where water is placed between the lens and the wafer, it improves the resolution, lets them get down to 10 nanometers, even 7 nanometers, sometimes 5 nanometers in the most extreme case. Although EUV, extreme ultraviolet machines, are 5 nanometers and below. So you can see they're near the cutting edge, but not really on the bleeding edge. And we saw a big increase in sales in these R5 machines, in addition to the increase in EUV machines. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about this right now. We know about the China export bans as they apply to NVIDIA chips. They also apply to these ASML machines. So they can't sell the EUV machines mostly into China. They can't sell some of the most advanced R5 machines, the R5 DUV models, but they can sell other ones to China. So when we think about R5, it makes you wonder, is this China? Because China is buying chip equipment from ASML. And indeed, it is by far the largest outlet for sales, even despite all these export controls. It was 41% of revenues last quarter. And while that was down from the 49% and 47% it had been earlier in the last year, don't be fooled. There was a big chip equipment push in China for these machines, and it resulted in the biggest quarter of China sales ever for ASML, even though as a percentage of sales it was down a little bit. So there are new export controls coming. So you got to wonder what's going to happen with ASML going forward. Here's CEO Christophe Forquet asked exactly that question.
Quite a few moving parts when it comes to export controls from the US. As you know, the US articulated a number of new regulations in December. Actually, two big parts there. One was they included a number of new technologies on the list of restricted technologies, and they also added a number of fabs to the list of restricted fabs. So fab, where restrictions apply. You also know that the Dutch government very recently came out with new regulation there as well. But I would say that the combination and the impact of those both US and Dutch measures has been appropriately reflected in the guidance that we've given before. So the 30 to 35 billion properly reflects the limitations that we see from an export controls perspective.
So you wouldn't expect the CEO of a company that sells so much into China to, talk any mess about the Chinese equipment, but recognizing that some of those things that they've been selling in the last quarter, and you wonder about RFI, will not be sold next quarter in the coming year, and it's all in the guidance. All right, what's your big drill on earnings takeaway? What's the one number that tells us a whole lot? We got that. So ASML just reporting Q4 earnings. Your essential summary tells you you've got 9.3 billion euro in revenues, really great gross margins at about 51.7%. That's 28% growth on the top line. And the one number that tells you a whole lot is EUV is really driving this show right now. Those are the machines that make AI chips. 2.988 billion in euros in revenue for this machine, these EUV machines. Really powerful numbers from ASML. All right, thanks for checking out Drill Down Earnings. I'm Cory Johnson. Check us out on all the socials, on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and of course on X. Thanks for watching Drill Down Earnings.